No gate, no fans. I want your opinion on something, too. Fight of the night was Elliott and Royval, and performance of the night was Dern and Burns. What'd you guys think was the fight of the night? Did you think the
Warrensillo and Carlisle.
Yeah? Is that what everybody thinks? Yeah.
Just want to cut them.
We had a hard time. We had a hard time back there tonight, which is always good when it's a hard time. But I hate seeing some of these kids get, we'll figure it out. I'll give them something.
Very nice. Well, we did have our first UFC event inside the Apex.
Yeah.
Give me your thoughts. The product, the way it looked, how it felt.
It's great. I mean, listen, the building is beautiful on TV. It looks great. We're not in some massive arena with no seats filled. It works. The timing on building this place was absolutely perfect. It couldn't have worked out any better, and I'm sure it's been great for you guys. I mean, this place was built and designed for fights, so hopefully you felt the same way.
A lot was made coming into this week of the small cage. We've talked about this in the past. I mean, was there a conscious decision to use the small cage in here? Could you put the big one in there if you wanted?
Yeah, we could, but it would be massive inside that room. And then, if I take this cage and put it in arenas, it looks tiny in the arena. So, yeah.
It ended up being very entertaining fights, though, and it seems like statistically you get more.
We had great fights in Florida, too.
That's true.
Fights were great in Florida, To say that it's a catch-22. Of course, smaller cage engages guys more or whatever. But listen, if guys come to fight, they come to fight, whether you're in a big octagon or a small one. And it'd be one thing if the fights all sucked in Florida and we're like, we got the smaller cage, but that's not the case.
Fair enough. The broadcast tonight did mention events on June 13th and June 20th as well. Is it safe to assume they'll take place here? Is that official yet?
Yeah.
Okay, fair enough. Talk about Gilbert Burns. I mean, the guy looked absolutely incredibly, dominated a former champion. What did you think of Gilbert Burns' performance tonight?
Yeah, he looked incredible, man. Anywhere the fight goes, you standing, if they wrestle, if it goes to the ground, his jiu-jitsu is ridiculous. Great leg kicks. He hurt him to the leg. Great kicks to the head. I mean, that kid can do anything, and he's aggressive. I actually thought he would fight more aggressively than he did tonight, but you got to be careful with somebody as dangerous as Woodley.
Yeah. Where do you think he fits in right now? I mean, there's so many names at welterweight right now.
He's in the top 5. I mean, this kid breaks into the top 5. The welterweight division looks incredible now. You got Usman, you got him, you got Colby Covington, you got Edwards and Masvidal, and it's awesome.
Yeah. And last thing for me, I mean, I know you kind of wanted to get through tonight to see what happened, to figure out what to do with welterweight, but can you definitively say what is next for Usman, what the title fight is?
Yeah, so Tuesday we'll get back into the matchmaking room and we'll get that worked out. If you look at the divisions and the way they're heating up right now, and thank God we're 4 fights in right now from after the break, so we're back on schedule. When we're done next weekend, we're back. We're back on schedule, and these things are heating up to make some really fun fights this summer.
Do you know what you want for him, though? I mean, do you know what makes sense as the number 1 contender right now?
Not right now, because what happens is we get in the matchmaking meeting, and I don't know all the intimate details of what's going on with each guy and where their head is. So when we get in and we start working on these fights, the guys will download me and say, well, he's saying this and this guy's saying that. It's not as easy as people think, because we just go in and go, oh, this guy and that guy. It's not that easy. I wish it was that easy.
Dana, at the beginning of the broadcast, you paid tribute to George Floyd. I don't know if you've seen what's going on in the country like right now with all the protests across the country, but what was in the decision to do that?
Yeah, what we did for him and we did for the Nevada State Athletic Commission doctor who just passed away too. He was a great guy, and did a lot of fights and did a lot of the tough fights. Because we should. I mean, what happened was horrible, and it's something that's really affecting this country right now and the world. I mean, there's riots going on everywhere across the world right now. It was the right thing to do.
What do you do with Tyron Woodley now? At his age, that's 2 performances in a row. He hasn't looked the best, hasn't looked like his old self. Is his time at the top coming to an end, do you think?
He'll determine that. I mean, I think that Tyron Woodley worked hard and got in great shape for this fight and took this fight very serious. And, you know, he got dominated tonight. He will drop in the rankings, and we'll see what's next for him and see how he does if he comes back. But, I mean, the guy's 38 years old. He's had huge gaps in his, you know, in his fight time. You know, it's been almost 2 years, I think, since he fought. So that's tougher to do as you get older, even if you're a physical freak like he is.
Yeah. Welterweight is probably one of your most stacked divisions right now, but it's also one of the divisions that comes with perhaps the hardest negotiations. Right, those guys always seem to be causing issues. When you have someone like Burns show up, does that make it easier for you to say to the other guys, "Hey, if you don't want to take this fight, he'll take it"? Does it help you out?
Yeah, no, it's really not like that. If a guy doesn't want to fight, we don't push guys to fight. If a guy wants to sit up, Woodley's been out almost 2 years. Woodley did that when he was the champ too. You know, it makes it harder when the one thing that we do is you have a year to defend your title, which is a very long time, right? And if you don't, we move on. But most of these guys, listen, if you don't want to fight, you don't have to fight.
And last thing for me, obviously yesterday you spoke about Jon Jones, and then as soon as you finished talking, he basically tweeted out saying that if you want to, he'd like you to show those texts that you supposedly have, and still basically saying that you're not telling the truth about the interaction. Any plans to show those texts?
What do you do? Who do you believe? It's up to you guys.
Fair enough.
Fuck would I lie for? What do I gain in lying about it? Why would I lie? It doesn't matter. You know what I mean? You know, obviously he's fired up right now, and he had a great talk yesterday with Hunter, my lawyer, who's, you know, he's really close to Jon Jones and likes him, and they have a good relationship, and they had a good talk yesterday. But you know, it is what it is. I really don't care. I could care less, to be honest with you. So.
Actually a good talk, a positive talk, not.
Yeah, they had a good talk. They had a good talk yesterday. Those guys are tight. Jon Jones and I have always had this, you know. I'm always looking at what Jon Jones could have been, you know. He could have been the LeBron of the sport. He could have been literally that big. You know, the stuff that he's been through to show up and think he, you know, basically demand $15 million or $20 million or $30 million. It's crazy. So he can do whatever he wants to do. He can sit out. He can fight. He can whatever. You know how this works. You guys know how I am. Jon Jones can say whatever he wants publicly. It's his God-given right here in America. He can say whatever he wants. And when he's ready to come back and fight, he can.
I saw a lot of people saying, like, why can't he make Deontay Wilder money? I mean, you said he's the greatest of all time, right? So,
being the greatest of all time doesn't mean you get $30 million. Being able to sell. Jon Jones has done a lot of things to himself. He's saying, in one of his tweets, he was saying that I tarnished you? You've done a very good job of tarnishing you. No, I haven't done that. You know, Hunter told him, I'll walk in, you can come in here and walk through the numbers. I'll walk you through all the numbers. And he says, I don't give a fuck what the numbers are. I want what I want, and that's it. It's not how life works. Why don't you guys fly back and tell your boss, I don't give a fuck what this company makes. This is what I want. You're going to give it to me. See how that fucking works out for you.
Dana right here. There seems to be a lot of surprise that Carlisle and Quarantillo didn't get fight of the night online. So people are asking, like, who makes that decision? So who made that decision not to pick that fight?
Me, Sean, and Mick make that decision.
All right. And then
we blew it, huh? Is that what you're telling us? You're telling us we blew it tonight? No, that bums me out. That bums me out because, you know, we all felt like, you know, if you looked at at that Tim Elliott fight, and with Royval, it was super technical. I mean, that fight was super technical. You know, they were going back and forth, and I don't know. We felt like that was fight of the night. The other dudes was an absolute straight-up dog fight. Absolutely, the Carlisle fight was a straight dog fight. So I'll kick those kids something.
Have you ever seen something like after the first round in the Quarantillo-Carlisle fight where Carlisle had turned around with like 5 seconds left and then Quarantillo...
Never saw that. I've never seen that in the UFC. I've seen it happen in boxing before. The famous one, what's his name, turned around and walked away from Lennox Lewis. Remember that? He just put his hands down and started walking away. And
He was just walking around the ring.
yeah, exactly. But he turned his back to him, too. I think, did you guys talk to him tonight? Did he think the bell rang or thought the round was over? I think they clapped the sticks, and he thought that was the end of the round or something and got off him and started walking away. I don't know, but that's what I'm assuming. But, yeah, that sucks. I'll take care of those kids.
And then really impressive performance from Callan Chukagian. She said that she felt it was her best performance. She got to show all the tools that she had. So where do you go with her after coming off, in her words, like Valentina dominated her, and then she puts on the best performance of her life?
Yeah, she looked good tonight, She looked really good. And she came in and she made a statement that, hey, I'm still one of the best in the world. Don't overlook me because of the loss to Shevchenko.
Hey, Dana, now that you've had events in two places, can you kind of compare and contrast? Was there anything more difficult about doing it here in Nevada, or was it easier because it's home? What were the differences?
The differences were it was good to be home. It's good to be, here on our own property. And but it was good. Listen, guys, we can do this anywhere. We can go to friggin' Alaska or, the North Pole. I don't care where we go. We can do this anywhere. My team is really, really good. We can do this anywhere.
I know you've said you've been spoken to people from other sports leagues that are looking to restart. What kind of advice have you learned that you've passed on in those conversations? Well,
the people that run these other sports leagues are really smart guys. They know their business better than I know their business. So basically, they have to dive in. It's very time consuming. You have to break down, an event piece by piece and figure out how you would keep people safe in that environment once you put on the event. These guys will figure it out. This really isn't rocket science.
Hey Dana, this is the first event here in Las Vegas since the pandemic, and I'm wondering, what does it mean for you to have live sports back in Las Vegas? And also, the backdrop is some crazy times going on with the pandemic, with the unrest nationally from coast to coast. What does it mean to have live sports back in Las Vegas, but also having live sports back in the country to give something people can kind of put their arms around?
No, it's awesome, and it needs to happen sooner, man. These other leagues got to start moving faster so we can really start to feel normal again. It's amazing when you don't have live sports, you realize how important they really are and how we need them as human beings. It can be done. I'm telling you, the biggest problem isn't COVID-19. COVID-19 isn't the reason all these sports leagues can't go. These guys can figure it out. It's financial. It's financially. This is a massive financial burden on everybody's company. I mean, where you guys work too. If and when you guys go back to work, it's a huge financial burden to do all the things that you need to do to comply with keeping the place safe. And I truly believe that's the real reason that you haven't seen any of the majors come back yet, because they're looking at what it's going to cost them. And again, like I told you before when I spoke to you guys the other day, one guy makes the decision here, me. And you know me, so we're fucking going. These other guys, you got the league, you got different owners with different opinions and different financial situations, and it makes it a lot harder to pull off than something like this.
Dana, on a lighter note, the other day you got in a heated argument with ESPN host Dan Le Batard. It kind of ended where you would agree to a charity match with him. Is there legs to that? Is it gonna
Please let that be true.
MMA, boxing?
Please let that be true.
What would the rules be?
Who knows? Listen, I'll bend the rules for him. I'll give him. He says he's got 80 pounds on me, not 80 good pounds. Okay, there's 80 bad pounds or 80 good pounds. He's got the bad ones. Please let that be true.
Good for charity. Raise the money.
Sure. Any other questions?
As we were going through the process today of getting tested and hanging out in those hotel rooms, I could only think, gosh, this must be so expensive. And how is it even worth it to the UFC? What is the most expensive part of the testing and the protocols? But it still must be worth it to you.
It's so expensive. This whole thing is so expensive. I mean, normally Vegas would be open. We would cut a deal with the casino to get rooms. Now we have to rent out an entire hotel ourselves. I mean, the list just goes on and on. But like I told you guys the other day, the way that I always think and look at stuff like this is I always try to solve the problems. We're going to solve the problems. We're going to figure it out. The show's going to go on. I'm not just going to go home and stay in my house and not figure out my employee. The easy answer to this is I lay off most of my staff, okay? Lay off most of my staff, take all my executives and cut their pay in half. Fighters don't fight. Listen, there's a pandemic going on here. You guys, whenever sports come back, we'll fight. And the list goes on and on. That's not what I do. That's not what I'm paid to do. That's not the way I'm built. It's not the way that I think and look at things. I feel like in the position that I'm in, I have an obligation to a lot of people. 350 employees here in Las Vegas who've worked hard for me for the last 20 years, right? Fighters, when I talk about the fighters, this sport has grown as big and as fast as it has because of nights like tonight. These kids come in and they perform. You know what I mean? I'm getting fucking goosebumps telling you the story. They perform and they put on great fights every time they step in the octagon. I can count in one hand how many times I've left a show and go, God, that whole show sucked. You know what I mean? In 20 years, I can count in one hand how many times. And I just feel like I have an obligation to all these people, and I have an obligation to the fans. So it's just the way I'm wired, and yeah, financially, it's not a great situation, and I guarantee you that's why most of the other sports aren't jumping right in to come back, because it ain't cheap, and it's a lot more work than 3 months ago.
But you're also a financially savvy guy.
Well, thank you.
I was looking, for you to tell me if you agree with that or not.
I've done okay. I've done all right. I think that I've been lucky because if you look at some of these other sports that have been around for 100+ years, they've had the luxury of big television deals, massive sponsors, tons of support from the media, and the list goes on and on. I had none of that starting out. We had to figure out how to make this thing work, how to make this business make money and pay, because what people forget is there are people who invest in this business. There are people that put money into this thing to make this work, especially, during times like this, So the people who take the risk have to get some reward. The fighters got to get paid. My employees got to get paid. The list goes on and on. We figured it out, and that's what we do. We figure these problems out, and I love it. That's really where I thrive. Chaos. I love it. Good? Have a good night, everybody. Thank you.